during the pandemic period, many companies stepped up to try and help general practice, their healthcare, and the public in terms of what they're trying to do. I think many across primary care will agree that one of the companies that's been one of the shining stars throughout this has been AccuRx in the way that they've helped practices, particularly things like video consultations and online consultations and other parts that this company has been doing. And their responsiveness to me has been absolutely amazing. So for this episode, I'm really happy and proud to show and speak with their owner, Jacob Haddad, as we talk about AccuRx, what they've been doing and what's planned for the future. How are you doing, Jacob?
Good, thanks. How are you, Gandhi?
Not too bad. And thank you for joining us. I know you're busy and definitely got lots on at the moment and loads of things that we're going to talk about with AccuRx. But I guess my first question, probably one of the most requested ones I've had, is how do you actually pronounce the company's name?
It's a topic for big debate. We say AccuRx, but we're not too offended if people say AccuRx. We've heard all sorts from AccuChain to the green bubble. But yeah, we say AccuRx.
Cool. One of the other ones I had was AccuTreatments, because obviously RX is commonly used as an abbreviation for treatment. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not right, but okay.
Yeah, so we used to do decision support for antibiotic prescribing. So that's where the name came from. And then we'd never got around to rebranding, and it's a bit late now.
Well, it's definitely a name that works, and it's definitely one that's become synonymous with general practice, particularly over the past 6 months. How's that period been for you guys?
We generally describe it as the most exhilarating, exhausting, emotional, exciting chunk of our careers. I think if you speak to most people in the team, we're now in a bit more of like a sustainable rhythm. But yeah, it was obviously pretty full on, and really privileged to be able to do what we did in terms of supporting healthcare workforce.
Cool. So, and I know many people probably know you for things like video consultations and online consultation and text messaging in particular, but that's not how you guys started, was it?
So yeah, we started out building decision support to try and improve antibiotic prescribing. And after 18 months, realized that there wasn't really a business there. It wasn't, whilst most people agree that antimicrobial resistance is this huge threat to modern medicine, it's not urgent enough to get the attention it needs. But we also, through that, learned a lot about the challenges that particularly primary care were facing, and saw glimpses of what's become our product today. So we let users send some advice at the end of an appointment about a sore throat or a UTI or something like that. And when it landed on their phone when they were demoing it and went into the patient record at the same time, that was like witchcraft that was possible with tech in 2017 at the time. So we definitely, that was one thing we really carried forward from then.
Cool. And I guess now your focus has shifted. Obviously, the pandemic was an interesting period. I remember hearing a story that I think on a Friday, just as the pandemic kind of kicked off, you guys just basically got together and churned out video consultations for general practice. I mean, tell us about that.
So towards the end of February, we we're hearing more in the news about COVID, and it was very much a not a problem in the UK yet. It was something we were reading about on the news in China and Iran and northern Italy. But we could see it was, people were practices in particular were starting to get concerned. We checked with them sort of, I think, right at the beginning of March, should we, or end of February, should we build a way to triage patients remotely? And there was pretty lukewarm interest. We use our Facebook group often to just quickly get a straw poll on an idea and quickly get a response on how much appetite there would be. And then a week later, practices, it was much more forefront on their mind. So we were talking to practices as we just routinely do normally when we're developing products, who are saying, we're calling up every patient to check if they've been overseas, or we want to avoid patients coming in and putting themselves and other patients and staff at risk, but we don't have webcams on every computer, and we don't have a video solution, or we've got one, but every patient needs an app. And so we knew there was something to be done there. So yeah, Friday lunchtime, we decided let's let's try and do something. I remember, so we have a town hall, we call it a show and tell on town hall every Friday afternoon, and Lawrence, the co-founder, and I share like what's keeping us up at night. I remember that week we shared, we're about to do all this work on COVID. Are we doing enough on it, or is it a massive distraction? And are we actually going to do this work that leads to nothing and doesn't really benefit anyone? But we then that weekend, a few of the teams stepped up and said, we can get something out by Monday. They really saw the urgency just from speaking to our users and hearing them. We've done a bit of prototyping Friday afternoon without writing any code, just trying putting video links in text and seeing how they open up and things like that. So yeah, Monday morning turned it on for about 50 practices and just tested it. Worked, seemed to all work well. So flicked it on for 3,500 that afternoon. And then sort of things just took off. So number of practices, we then doubled down on a lot of other features. But that was that first weekend.
And I know so the platform that you use is something called Whereby. And again, its name is always up for debate, whether it's Whereby or Whereby or that kind of stuff. But I'm curious to know what made you go with that, because I know a lot of the other companies that provide video consultation stuff have used different kind of backends and that kind of stuff. But yours is quite unique in the way that you've done it. So I was keen to know, why.
Being honest, the main driver back then was just speed and what can we get out that will work reliably without a load of custom work. We'd had good experience using Whereby for customer support calls, where we needed to get a user to share their screen and TeamViewer was being blocked, which is other software we use. So we knew it was quite resilient to NHS firewalls and IT, which is like a massive challenge with using these sorts of products, is like, will it actually work on those computers? And we were able to just spin it up and try out putting those Whereby links in before writing any code. So it was really then originally about speed. Obviously they had to meet the bar on how data is processed and how easy the workflow is for patients is obviously a key criteria as well. We since probably a few weeks later, maybe a month later, looked much more closely at other platforms, and obviously had loads of them contacting us once they saw our numbers take off, but remained pretty confident that they were the best solution for what we needed.
And you mentioned some of the IG kind of stuff that happened then. I know during the height of the pandemic there was lots of, there's numerous forums, there's groups, all this kind of stuff, and the security of AccuRx kept coming up as an issue. How was that period for you guys? And I guess, do you have any thoughts on that kind of process that happened?
Yeah, so we're very used to getting a lot of questions about security and hygiene. Obviously, it's something very much at the forefront of a lot of our users' minds, which is a good thing, and we completely understand. And we've got a lot in place around that. So there's a load of boxes you can tick. You can do your DSP toolkit, and you can do your Cyber Essentials Plus, and go through NHS digital assurances, and we do all of that. And you have to do that, and we've been doing that for a while. What we actually believe is much more important, as in addition to that, is a culture around security and IG, so that people are thinking about, when they design a feature, what are the ways that this could go wrong, so that when someone joins on their first day, like part of their induction is like, how could we have a breach? Everyone in the team has a personal security audit, because if their personal accounts and things aren't secure, then their work ones are less likely to be secure. So a lot of it is is having a really strong culture in the team around that. I think a lot of the questions that came up were a result of the fact that historically we've done a very poor job, being honest, of engaging CCGs. We've really, really focused on practices, like end users get useful software in their hands as fast as possible and get them using it. And that meant for a lot of CCGs and all the new practices, when half the country was like taking us up and using us, they were all like, who's AccuRx? We've never heard of them. And trust is very much, it's built through consistency over time. And so practices who've been using us for 2 years, a year, 6 months, they've read our articles on IG, they've seen our product be reliable, they've seen how we respond to outages and things like that, and they have a lot of trust. But with all these new practices, new CCGs, they'd never heard of us before, so we had to do a lot more work in terms of just our comms and how we get that out there. A new element that came in during COVID is we released a lot more patient-facing sort of product surface area, so patients being able to send in photos and reply to things, receive documents, and that also prompted a lot of patients to go, who's AccuRx? And so now we've got things like patient-facing resources on our website about specifically about privacy and IG. So yeah, there's I think a lot of the challenge we had around there wasn't that anything we needed to internally do differently. It was much more around how we communicate what we are doing.
I definitely agree with that. I think communication is one of the most challenging parts of everything that we're trying to do, and get the right message to the right person is inevitably difficult. I know you guys have done loads of work with that in particular, and some of the toolkits that you have do really help with that. I mean, one of the ones that I really fell in love with initially was the integrated NHS.UK picker on your text messaging systems. It's something that's just so simple, but allows you to communicate such rich information easy, really. It was just things like that I really loved. I mean, where did those kind of ideas come from? Because it's so different to what you see from other places.
So that specific idea came from when we were doing antibiotic prescribing. You send advice at the end about a sore throat, UTI, an ear infection, and we'd written the advice ourselves because I don't know why we did it, to be honest, but we had this realization that we needed to make our product routine. And the example I always use with the team is we need to be toothbrushing, not flossing. Everyone knows you need to floss. They know all the benefits. People don't do it because it's not part of their routine. Brushing your teeth is part of your routine when you wake up, when you go to bed, so they do it. So how can we be a product that every time you see a patient, you might find us useful, not just like the 4% of patients where you remember to use us. So we said, right, how can we provide advice for every condition? At the time, it was NHS Choices, before it was NHS UK. They didn't have an API, so we just scraped the whole website, pulled through all the condition pages and made a drop down. And that's what we thought the main use for Chain SMS was going to be, was at the end of an appointment, sending advice. And where that came from was talking to GPs about, when you don't think an antibiotic's appropriate, but you want to reassure a patient, what do you do? And they said, I give them a leaflet because I want them to leave with something so they feel sort of validated and coming to the doctor and not leaving empty-handed. So that's where that specific idea came from. But your wider point around simplicity and sort of usefulness comes from really two areas. So one is just spending as much time as possible with users on the front line. So when we shifted from antibiotic prescribing to what's become communication, we just spent around 5 months living in one GP practice. And even since then, everyone in the team, whether they're a software engineer or our talent lead, goes and spends time in practice. And during COVID, that's been more challenging. We've done it over video and things like that. The second is around simplicity and focus. So yes, over the last 6 months, you've seen AccuRx start to let you send documents and send responses and do video calling. But from February 2018 to February 2020, all we obsessed over is, can a practice go to our website, install our software, integrate it with their record system, and message their first patient within 5 minutes? And do that if they've got really slow internet and they don't have admin privileges and they've got their antivirus blocking us, and all these sorts of real gritty challenges. Having a really simple product goal, let us focus on that, and then you earn the right to be more complicated. So at the point you can meet that goal and people can download you easily and they can message a patient in 2 clicks, then you earn the right to start saying like, okay, what about if you could send a document to the patient with your message, but not before then? Because if you're trying to add documents in but patients are struggling to set you up, it's going to be really, really hard to grow the product on like firm foundations.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share a little bit of a story from my experience, if that's all right, on this one. And I think it's a testament to how simple the product works, and it does just work. So I was working in one of our clinical management centres, so the hubs where we were seeing high risk COVID patients, and it was within the first week that it kicked off at the new centre. So all the IT and stuff was still being worked on and updated and all these kind of things. And it was a Friday afternoon. It was actually the bank holiday Friday afternoon, in fact. So no one else was pretty much, it was just me. And I had a patient I needed to send to hospital. We didn't have a printer, so I couldn't give the patient basically the documents they needed to get them to the right place to get assessed. And I was like, how on earth can I do this? So I thought, well, I normally do this by AccuRx. I had a look on the computer. Unfortunately, AccuRx wasn't downloaded. So I went to try and download it, but then I needed to link to the organization, which, because I was using the separate one, wouldn't work. So I was like, okay, this isn't working. So I used the Fleming tool that you have, the one that obviously works for anybody with nhs.net address. And through that, I was able to send a PDF of the document to the patient's phone, and they had it on their phone before they left, and they could see it, and they could see everything that I'd done, why they were going into hospital. And that they knew that as soon as they got to hospital, they just had to show that to the the admission team and stuff, and it had everything that they needed, including details about their records that they were happy to share with those people, because that's what they needed for their care. And that process took about 5 minutes. And the fact that I knew it was there was just such a stress reliever in trying to adapt on a bank holiday Friday when things are not around. So I know for me personally, that was just something that helped make my life so much easier.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really nice to hear. Obviously, we want to make it take 30 seconds, not 5 minutes. But I think,
don't forget, I was doing this in PPE, so
yeah,
that was
that's true. I think 2 really, really important points you picked up on there. The 2 things we really believe. So one is that when we make things generic, it lets people innovate. So if we go and say, right, this is for referrals, all you can do is send referrals on it. You can't go and innovate. And if you look at other products, we look at Microsoft Excel, people use it for 1,000,001 use cases because it's really generic, right? If you go and look at an accounting package, all you can use it for is accounting. So we try and be more like Excel. We try and be generic enough, still simple, but generic enough that people can innovate. And the reason we do that, and this is really the second reason, is that healthcare is like so messy. When we look at it, it's messy, but it's tied together by humans who are unbelievably good at dealing with this mess. So much of healthcare is, this like, I need a referral, but I've got one there and I need it moved to there because I'm being seen for this other thing there, and they don't have this test result, so can you send that over? And all the stuff that it's really, really hard to build a routine repeatable processes around. There are loads of routine repeatable processes in healthcare, but so much of everyone's time is spent dealing with when things fall outside of that and they've got to chase things up. So our view on this is humans are great at dealing with that mess, but rather than them having to deal with that mess by calling up a switchboard, waiting for 10 minutes, sending a letter, sending an email, but they're not sure who the right person is, and when they're back from holiday, just giving them really simple communication tools to deal with that, and really like leveraging the ingenuity and like workarounds and innovation of frontline staff. So I love that example.
Thank you. And I guess you picked up on the 2 biggest challenges that the healthcare service effectively has. So number one is communication, which I know we've talked about, but I guess the other one is also integration. I mean, we know integration is a real challenge across clinical systems, and it's something that things like GPIT Futures and the other kind of stuff is meant to improve. You guys kind of somehow managed to get around a lot of the integration stuff, because obviously AccuRx integrates with both the 2 largest clinical systems, it's EMIS and System 1. How did you do
that? In terms of technical integration, it just took quite a lot of time. So we had EMIS integration quite early on, but it took us around 3 years until we could get access to even start integrating like building the integration with System 1. So yeah, partly time. I'd also say a lot of the hard work isn't in necessarily just having the integration of the API. It's really making it work. So how do you do all the troubleshooting if it's not set up correctly? How do you handle error states that come back? Like that's where 90% of the work sits, is in that. But the example used around Fleming, so our web product where you don't need to be using a primary care clinical system, I think is a really good example of where there are brilliant integrations out there. So that uses single sign-on from NHS Mail, the personal demographic service, or people think of it as the spine, where you can look up any patient. And that means it can cover any person in the country, or any person registered at a GP practice. So there are some really, really powerful integrations out there, and a lot of why we were able to move fast during COVID is we had those integrations that we'd picked up along the way, and it was bolting them together in different ways that let us do quite powerful things.
And how are you seeing that uptake, I guess, with secondary care? Because obviously Fleming allows secondary care effectively access to the same system, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the first thing to say is, and you picked up on it there, we think healthcare is a communication industry. That's what everyone's doing every day, making referrals, getting second opinions, coordinating care, getting information to patients. That's like where the value's added. And also when things go wrong, it's usually because of some sort of breakdown in communication. So we're really laser focused on anything that is communication, anything that isn't. So appointment booking or, population health management, like that sits outside of our focus. With secondary care, we're kind of taking two approaches in. One is a closer product to what GPs use, so messaging patients, video calling patients, sending documents, things like that. And that's a very basic product. So Fleming, like use yourself, it's much more lightweight. Goes back to the be simple until we earn the right to be more complicated principle. So that's one approach we're taking in, and we've got around 15% of trusts in the country using that like at scale, and then another 15% or so using that to some degree. So that might be like a department using it or a couple of departments. The other approach we're taking in is really harnessing this engaged and innovative user base in general practice who want to have easier ways of communicating with secondary care, and secondary care want to have easier ways of them communicating with the GP. So we've got some pilots starting in Northeast London and Hampshire, and I think there's one starting in Leeds as well, to make it more streamlined for practice to communicate. Actually, initially, quite a lot of focus is on community trusts as well as the acute trusts. So that's just in a much, much earlier stage. Like as a company, we've just got so much to learn there. It's taken us years to understand general practice well, and it still feels like we only understand a small slice of it. And obviously, the acutes are an order of magnitude more complex in terms of everything from incentives to the number of different departments and things they have. So yeah, we're a lot earlier in our journey there, but really confident that we can have a lot of impact. So I describe it as you walk into a hospital and you're like tripping over communication gaps and inefficiencies and things like that are ripe for improvement. Or I speak to my wife, who is a hematologist, about what she did today, and it was half an hour on the phone trying to get hold of this GP practice to find out what a patient's usual INR is and things like that. So there's a load of opportunity there to go after.
Okay, and I guess we've talked about some of the opportunities that are there. I know AccuRx have had various different kind of products throughout their journey. One that I remember, which was my first kind of contact with you guys, was about the chain reception product that you have. How's that going in terms of, where is it and what's happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. One we get a fair bit. So chain reception is like as a knowledge management product, little search toolbar where you can type in word and looks up. It's like an internal wiki for a practice. And where it came from is when we pivoted for antibiotic prescribing, we were really focused on skill mix, and that only works. You can only really, shift work to the right staff if the reception team are really up to speed on exactly who can do what goes where. So that's where it came from. It's now used in, I think, around 15 or 20 practices. It's not huge numbers. Where they are using it, they generally really like it, and it's well embedded. We've paused development on it. I'm sure it's something we will come back to, but it goes back to focus, and everything we choose to do is something else that we can't do. So if you look at all the other things we've done over the past couple of years, like if we would have moved chain reception forward, something else wouldn't have. And that's just like the tough decisions, and they only get tougher because the more progress you make, there are more things you want to and could, are capable of doing or having a go at. So yeah, with chain reception, we've continued supporting it as practices. The main challenge in it is an onboarding one. That's the one we haven't cracked. And like confident we could if we put a team on it, but it's a focus thing. So how do you make sure that when someone first has that search bar, it's full of useful content? Because if the first time someone experiences it, it's empty and it says start adding stuff, you've got this like empty room problem. Really, really hard to get people excited about that. Because if the first time someone goes in, they're like, oh, there's all this brilliant content. Or if we make it enjoyable to create content is the other sort of product approach we could take, and we haven't sort of got to that yet. So that development of that is on pause, but I'm sure we'll get to it.
Cool. And you talked about focus. I guess a lot of the current focus at AccuRx is probably around the patient triage tool that I know majority of primary care is just anxiously waiting for the kind of the reveal, shall we say. Yeah. I know that obviously your team's already done some work with us, and if people want to check out the tool in a bit more detail, feel free to check out this link that's coming up right now. And also we've got an upcoming demonstration of it in October where we're going to have that for you. But yeah, what's happening with patient triage?
So there's, I think, coming up to 50 or so practices now using it at different stages of maturity, but really, really great feedback, things they really like, and then things we've taken away and improved on. So for example, how do they manage patient expectations over the weekend? And they sort of nuances we've released quite a few improvements around, and loads more improvements going in. So being able to send photos in, and the big one everyone's been excited about is it going into our inbox, which means you can one-click save it into the clinical system. So we've just, I think it was last week, contacted the next batch of 100 practices on the waiting list, and so we're onboarding them at the moment, and then going to continue ramping that up over the next few months. So we've got over 1,000 practices now, I think, on the waiting list for that, which is really, really exciting. And we're really, really keen to get that out there. What we've really enjoyed about it is it's the first time we've put a really strong emphasis on patient research as well as research with clinicians and healthcare staff. So spending a lot of time getting feedback from patients around, what makes sense to them and what's reassuring for them, and how do we manage their expectations. That will be coming soon. And like with everything we do, like we'll get it out and then we'll learn more and we'll put more improvements in, and like we hopefully now our users get that, but that wasn't necessarily the norm in the software that they're used to before.
Well, I agree. I think that's been one of the more refreshing things that we've seen with the way that AccuRx has developed things. It's that iterative design. It's the fact that you release something, find out where the kinks are, and then within a week or two, there's inevitably a better fix, which I think is also slightly a problem, because I noticed on your group, there's always a question of, can we have this? Can we have this? Can we have this? Can we have this? And I can't imagine how you guys figure out where do we laser our focus on those kind of things, because you're getting so many iterative design kind of comments and questions. It must be interesting.
Yeah, so we've always we sometimes describe it as like really, really like listen to our users, but then also stop listening at the right point. So what we try and do is listen to what they're requesting and then dig into what's the need. So they want, they want it to do X, but actually when you dig in, it's so that they can achieve this thing. And then that's what we really focus on, is like, how do they achieve this thing? So our most popular things sending an SMS to a patient responding, patient sending in a photo, video call, like they weren't things requested by practices, but they were things that came out of understanding practices user needs and what they wanted for other what they were asking for. And so that's what we really try and do, and over time build up a bit more intuition around, so we can predict a bit better how things will land, but you never really know until you get something out there. And so that's why we'll always try and build the simplest possible version, get it in the hands of users within, depends on how complex it is, but within a week if it's really small, or something like Patient Triage, build something in 6 weeks and get it in the hands of a practice using it with real patients, and then build on top of it. Because we learn with antibiotic prescribing, like you can spend months designing the like perfect system, but you'll get it wrong. Like every major software project has like shown that, particularly in healthcare. So yeah, get something simple in the hands of users. Now you can only do that if you've got the basics, so how you deploy software, making sure you're reliable, but obviously that you're also secure and handling data in the right way, and that you're clinically safe. If you've got that right, then you can be more agile. If you haven't got that right, it's really hard, because you can't go and build Patient Triage in 6 weeks, because you've got to go and figure out where does the data go and how's it stored, and all these, how do you authenticate users, and how do you push updates out, how do you retire old versions if someone's on like an old client, all these sorts of things. But like once you've got that sorted, then you can like be a lot more agile.
And I guess obviously with Patient Triage coming, there's two questions I've been hearing a lot lately. So number one has been the question about bulk SMS messaging, which I'm pretty sure is probably your most requested feature. I know that you guys are rolling this into the whole AccuRx Plus kind of package, which includes Patient Triage and stuff. So I guess my main question is going to be, can you give us an idea of what it is going to cost? I appreciate numbers may not be possible at this point, but some flavor.
Yes, we don't have the pricing completely finalized. We're going to test it a bit with CCGs, but we're creating a bundle of batch messaging, Patient Triage, sort of like premium SMS features, a load more Flories to collect data from patients, video consulting, all of that premium bundle. We're going to price on a per patient basis. As I said, we haven't finalized that. We're really aiming at the CCG level, and there's discounts if we can go above that to STP, and that we're going to announce that very, very shortly.
And I guess with you moving to a paid for model, obviously over the previous few months, AccuRx has been free, and I definitely know that general practice, has appreciated the effort and the time that's taken. But at the end of the day, services cost money; they have to be paid for. I guess there may be some practices that think that, well, we're going to have to pay for it, so we may not want to use it. How would you answer those kind of questions?
That's a really hard one. We had to be free for the first 2.5 years. We've been free because we didn't really understand the problem we were trying to solve for our users. So how can we go and start charging for things? We didn't know how much value we were creating, or if we even were providing value. But also, like, people couldn't even believe that there would be, we weren't confident of it yet, but users couldn't believe that you could have a software that iterated over time and had really good support and was user-centered in its design and all those sorts of things. So it's taken us a couple of years to really earn that trust. There will always be a free tier, so practices that don't upgrade will be able to continue using everything that was there before COVID, completely free, and that's really important, so we can get the benefit out, and so we've also got a wide user base, which lets us do interesting things across an area like communication with the hospital. And we'll always have free trials. So I think with those practices where they're unsure, they'll be able to try it, see the benefit. 99% of practices in the country are using us, so hopefully they've seen enough of different parts of the product to get a feel of what it's like. I think the big challenge actually is going to be more with CCGs who are going to be comparing us against other products just based on the features listed out, and that's that's probably where, there's going to be a bigger challenge. I think in general, in practices, they understand the value of simplicity and usability and those sorts of things. We sometimes have to push back with CCGs and with NHS Digital where there's a requirement and it doesn't match up with the user needs we've met. And we're like, we're not going to build a thing just because it's on a list of requirements if we don't genuinely believe, like all our engineers working on it, our designers, they have to really understand like what is the value this is going to create for a user, whether that's a member of healthcare staff, whether that's a patient. Not that at the point we're just building things because it's on a checklist, like something's gone wrong. So yeah, that I think that's the biggest challenge we're going to face. Batch messaging is a really good example of, and I know you said it was the most requested feature for at least basically 2 years, and we've put it off. And the reason we put it off is because we would much rather go after unmet need and problems that haven't been solved, like sending an ad hoc message to an individual patient, than go after things that have been solved and make them 10%, 20%, 50% better. It's just much more exciting, valuable, motivating. We can have much more impact if we go after these unmet problems. So we've had to go and build batch because CCGs have said, we're only going to procure one SMS solution. So the batch providers have started doing the direct messaging part. Previously, we just said, when people asked us about batch, we were like, oh, just go and use MJOG or iPlato. But they're now providing the ad hoc messaging too. So we've had to do batch. So yeah, that's part of our sort of like focus story continued, is really going after unmet need.
And I guess speaking of unmet need then, I know that's been one of the ethoses of AccuRx. Every time I speak to your team and stuff, it's always the thing they're focusing on. Patient triage is obviously coming out imminently in its fullest form. What's next? What's the next unmet need that you guys are looking at?
So there's a few really exciting things. In the practice, in primary care, we're looking at, beyond batch messaging, how can we make recall really great? How can we make it really easy to, when you message a patient saying, please, can you book an appointment, for them to actually book the appointment rather than just having to, call up reception to book it. Starting to look at how can we really double down on FLOREs and long-term condition management more generally. So instead of just asking some basic questions, help you identify the patients that are highest priority. Where we really want to get to is then driving that into screening. So where's the prevalence gap? Who are the patients at risk of AF or at risk of having undiagnosed COPD or whatever it is, and targeting those. In the outside of primary care, so acutes and community, and also care homes and pharmacies and mental health trusts, some of the things we're looking at there are around really streamlined communication with a GP practice. That was also in primary care, I guess. So the same way as it's 2 clicks for you to send a message to a patient, how can we make it 2 clicks for, if you're in A&E, you to send a message to a patient's GP, and if you're in the GP practice, 2 clicks for you to get advice from the respiratory team about this patient, or from get a district nurse to visit the patient tomorrow. Making that really instant is something we really strongly believe in, but to really get it right is very hard, because you're introducing a new workflow into another organization, and you've got to get all the organizations in the area using a thing. So it's really difficult. We've been working on it for a while, making progress, but it's hard. With that, making it a lot easier for other organizations to access a patient's GP record, but where the patient can give permission. So instead of you've got to be part of this, or have this code on your smart card and go to this terminal and everything, patient can turn up in A&E, and if they want to see their usual renal function, the doctor there can look them up, and the patient can approve access they get sent a code by SMS, and if they give that to the doctor there, then they can view the GP records. That's one thing we're working on. So yeah, there's loads of different things in flight. We also will want to just keep making our core messaging product better and faster, one thing that's really come out during COVID is the value of responses. So a year ago, if we said to GPs, there's a way for patients to respond, they said, uninstall this from my computer now, I don't want it. Whereas actually they've really seen how when they're in control of those responses, that can massively speed things up, because you go from a synchronous world where the patient has to be available at the same time to an asynchronous world where you can do things on both sides on your own schedule. So really working out how you can have a conversation through messages rather than just a transaction. That's another big area. So yeah, loads of stuff. You can see focus is something we struggle with.
And it's definitely a journey I'm keen to see how it develops, and looking forward to how that works, so particularly over the next couple of weeks and also the next few months as well, because I think it's going to be an interesting time. I know you're also speaking at our Digital Primary Care Conference in a couple of weeks' time on the 30th of September, and I know that you're planning on something pretty significant about innovation and things. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and tiny bit of a sneak peek for you there, guys, as well, that Jacob's going to be speaking at our event and hopefully sharing some even wiser words of wisdom, shall we say.
No pressure.
Yeah, none at all. And obviously, if you guys want to join us, the link will be coming up probably down right now, as well as the link for our AccuRx demonstration of Patient Triage that's going to happen on the 8th of October as well. So thank you, Jacob. I've really enjoyed this. I've been a massive fan of the work that you guys have been doing over the past few months and past year or so as well. I know, again, for me, I wanted to personally say thank you, but I know also for general practice and primary care, I'm sure there are many people that wanted to say thank you to what you guys have done, particularly the past few months. I cannot imagine that general practice would be where it is right now if it hadn't been for the way that you guys stepped up and helped us and things. I fully intend on embarrassing you by making that comment as well, so apologies on that. But
no, thank you. I get tearful when you say things like that, so it means a lot, and can't take any of the credit. I'm very privileged to work with both an amazing team, but also privileged that we get to help people like you in your practice, but thousands of other practices across the country who are they're really doing the hard work. So it's only a privilege, and thanks so much for having me on.
Definitely, and hoping that I'll be able to get you to come back on at some point in the future as well to talk again about what AccuRx are doing, what you guys are doing, and as well as more content and stuff as always. If anybody does want to check out our AccuRx stuff, so I've actually got some specific videos for AccuRx that you're more than welcome to check out, which are coming up right here. And as always, EGP Learning, subscribe with us, and we're here to save you and your patients time by taking answering your primary care and learning. We'll catch you in the next episode.